find myself still chomping at the bit on field theory a bit. Maybe I can start there and bring it in to the specific or to the personal. But I think that the default world that we live in the West is very much laboured with Freud's ideas still. And the really fascinating thing for me reading into the early theory and the historical context for Gestalt is that so much of it reads as Fritz Perl's rebellion against Freud, and, you know, trying to like cut down this notion that there is any objective reason and, you know, moral superiority to be had or intellectual superiority. So, you know, this is into dialogue, right? It's an equalizing thing of coming as our full selves and honoring the full other that we're in front of. In the worldview and the language of Gestalt, that moves us away from these pathologizing object-based narratives about the way people are. And I particularly found it transformative in my romantic relationships, because me, as a person who's good with words and quite articulate, and also has a very intense monotropic is the technical term, but one-track mind kind of reasoning process, I've been very ready in the past to presume that I know what my partner is thinking in an argument because I've got a good rational model of their subconscious, and you know you're doing this thing again. And in the Gestalt canon, yeah, and I caught myself the other day using those words, and we don't use those words, and we talk about things just being out of awareness, and it's such a more gentle way of looking at it, of like, just here and now, in this place and time, in this moment, you weren't quite thinking about it, and that's okay, and it doesn't mean that you're broken or faulty in some way. Yeah, and it, you know, I would be still with different people and honouring their complexity much more if I'd had this knowledge prior in my life. And I particularly think of one of the great loves of my life, Max Caitlin, who actually, this lump of smoky quartz that is a stem that I'm grounding myself with in this conversation, was the first crystal she ever gave to me. But yeah, you know, I was unkind to her because of this model of the subconscious and of the brain and of, you know, and being better at words than she is, or was, you know, everyone changes and evolves. So yeah, and yeah, to get into like the immediate of it, in the third pillar phenomenology that we haven't spoken to all that much, there's something also very permissive in just being with things as they are and trying to describe them as they are. And I really love the way that our classmate Susanna spoke about it, of it's a process of trying to make the familiar weird. You know, just like really talking about this without interpretation and without bigger story attached to it, like what is actually real for you right here and now. And there's so much, yeah, compassion and permission in that as well. Yeah.
So thinking about the theory of phenomenology, and I think of in my counseling practice, I just started my counseling practice, and how phenomenology is such a, so the moments where it's really impactful for the clients is when I used phenomenology, and especially when the clients are in a state where the feelings and emotions are not very easy to identify, to name. And it was also very difficult for me to really observe or guess what feelings they had. And at the moment, the phenomenology about those nonverbal, this facial expressions, very subtle changes in the voice and in their shoulders, and when I try to describe that is really impactful for the client to bring the attention back to what they feel at the moment. And it wasn't really important to describe or to name what it was, but it was a starting point for the client and me to start trying to find some words, describe, or just without words, just to stay in that kind of feeling. And then there are more feelings and meanings that just slowly emerged in the client themselves. And I find that is much more useful than just to talk in our words and brains about the concepts. That I think that was what the client was guessing, and I was also guessing, and we just got into this rabbit hole of what we guess they were experiencing. Yeah, so that's how phenomenology is so useful in the counseling practice. And I think another moment of where I feel like Gestalt theory is really, really powerful was when I was really missing the client, when I really couldn't understand what the client was talking about. Although they were talking, I think they were talking really logically and really clear, but I missed them. And when I missed them, there was this moment of me really trying and desperately trying to understand them. And I couldn't organize my words, and I was in a very messy state. And my effort of trying to understand them touched them. And at that moment, the client felt it's just more important and impactful than the moments when I understood them. Yeah, it's like this, like someone is trying so hard, although they didn't get you, but they're trying so hard to get you. And I think that's the dialogic attitude that is so useful, that's so healing.
Talking about phenomenology, it's this, through the training, this constant endeavour to understand yourself so that you can utilise your own phenomenological experience, your own meaning making, and offer it without knowing with the client as a way to work out together what's happening. And the being with, I think, that you're describing in the relationship is something that has a real depth to it, rather than going into an experience with a therapist who knows what the answer is, who's looking for a set of behaviours and being told by an expert. Gestalt therapy is quite different.
Yeah, that's what's really differentiated from other modalities.
You're not the expert of the client, they're the expert about themselves.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure out together.
Yeah. And that a Gestalt therapist has a responsibility to understand, to continue to work on themselves, to have supervision, to understand their own experience in order to turn up effectively for the client.